HOA president's husband broke into my garage to claim my tools were theirs. Some background. I've lived in my suburban home for about 5 years now. It's a nice neighborhood with well-maintained houses, good schools, and generally friendly neighbors. Like many such communities, we have a Homeowners Association, HOA. I've always paid my dues on time and followed the rules, even when some seemed a bit nitpicky. Our HOA president, Karen Davidson, not her real name, took office 2 years ago. Since then, she's been, let's say, zealous about enforcing rules. Everything from the shade of white you paint your fence to the exact height of your grass became subject to intense scrutiny. But I managed to stay under her radar by following everything to the letter. I'm a carpenter by trade and run my own small business. I've converted my garage into a workshop where I keep all my professional tools. We're talking about $30,000 worth of equipment that I've accumulated over 15 years of work. Every tool has my name engraved on it, and I keep detailed receipts and insurance documentation for everything. The trouble started 3 weeks ago when I was working on a commission piece in my garage. Karen's husband, Tom, walked by and seemed very interested in my setup. He kept asking questions about my tools, particularly my new DeWalt table saw and Festool track saw. I didn't think much of it at the time. Lots of people are curious about woodworking. A week later, Karen sent out a community-wide email about maintaining community standards and sharing resources. It mentioned something about how all external structures, including garages, were considered community property according to some obscure HOA bylaw. I thought it was odd but figured it was just another one of her power trips. Then came last Tuesday. I was at a client's house installing custom cabinets when my phone buzzed with a security alert. I have cameras installed in my garage workshop because of the valuable equipment. What I saw on the live feed made my blood boil. Tom Davidson was in my garage, trying to wheel my table saw out the door. He had somehow gotten the garage door open. I later found out he'd damaged the lock. I immediately called the police and rushed home, all while watching this guy attempting to steal my livelihood through my security camera. When I pulled into my driveway 15 minutes later, Tom was still there, now with Karen, and they had managed to get my table saw onto their driveway next door. The police arrived right behind me, perfect timing. What happened next was both infuriating and almost comical. Karen, standing there in her perfectly pressed khakis and polo shirt, tried to explain to the officers that she had authorized her husband to redistribute community resources. "Officer, as HOA president, I have the authority to manage community property," she said with complete conviction. According to Bylaw 7.3, all external structures are considered shared resources. The police officer, a no-nonsense woman named Officer Smith, wasn't buying it. "Ma'am, that's not how property law works. You can't just take someone's personal property, HOA president or not." "But the bylaws clearly state," Karen started. "The bylaws don't override state law," Officer Smith cut her off. "This is breaking and entering and attempted theft." Tom tried to jump in. "Listen, we're all neighbors here. We just thought since John has so many tools, sharing them would benefit the community. It's not theft if it's community property." I pulled out my phone and showed the officers the security footage. I have him on camera breaking into my garage and attempting to steal my equipment. I want to press charges. Karen's face went from confident to pale in seconds. "You can't be serious. We're on the HOA board. This will ruin our reputation." "You should have thought about that before breaking into my garage," I replied. The officers took statements from everyone involved. Tom was arrested on charges of breaking and entering and attempted theft. Karen wasn't arrested, but she was listed as an accomplice in the police report since she was actively helping move the stolen property. The next few days were intense. Karen and Tom hired a lawyer, who quickly advised them to plead guilty to reduce charges. Tom ended up with a misdemeanor conviction, 1 year of probation, and had to pay for the damage to my garage door plus court costs. Karen was forced to resign from the HOA board. But the story doesn't end there. Word spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. It turned out I wasn't the first person they'd tried to bully. I was just the first one with clear video evidence. Other neighbors started coming forward with stories about Karen's abuse of power, arbitrary fines, harassment over minor violations, and even attempts to force people to share their patio furniture for HOA events. The HOA board called an emergency meeting. Karen and Tom showed up, probably hoping to defend themselves, but it didn't go well for them. One by one, neighbors stood up to share their experiences. The meeting ended with a vote to completely overhaul the HOA bylaws, removing any vague language about community property and adding clear limitations to the board's power. The next few weeks were awkward, to say the least. Karen and Tom still live next door, but they've been unusually quiet. They installed tall privacy fences, ironically, against HOA regulations, and rarely come out except to get their mail. I see them sometimes when I'm working in my garage, and they practically run to avoid eye contact. The new HOA board is much more reasonable. They've scaled back many of the excessive rules Karen had implemented and focused on actual community improvements. We're even planning a neighborhood block party next month, though I doubt the Davidsons will attend. Last week, I installed additional security measures, better locks, motion sensors, and more cameras. Not just for my garage, but for the whole house. It might seem paranoid, but after what happened, I'd rather be safe than sorry. The best part? My business has actually improved. Several neighbors have commissioned pieces from me after seeing my workshop setup during all this drama. I'm now building a custom dining table for the family across the street, and I've got a wait list for other projects. I've learned some valuable lessons from this experience. Always have security cameras and keep them well maintained. 2. Document everything: receipts, insurance, photographs. 3. Know your rights and don't let anyone, especially HOA boards, convince you otherwise. Or, stand up to bullies, even if they hold positions of authority. The whole incident has become something of a neighborhood legend. New residents are told the story as a warning about power abuse, and the phrase, community property, has become a running joke at HOA meetings. Someone even made t-shirts with, "My garage, my rules," printed on them for the next block party. I still can't believe they thought they could get away with it. The audacity of breaking into someone's garage in broad daylight, on camera, and claiming it was perfectly legal because of HOA bylaws. It's almost impressive in its absurdity. Yesterday, I ran into Officer Smith at the local coffee shop. She remembered me and asked how things were going. I told her about all the positive changes in the neighborhood, and she shared that Karen and Tom's case is now used in police training as an example of HOA overreach. "You wouldn't believe how many HOA disputes we deal with," she said, "but yours was definitely one for the books." I've had time to reflect on everything that happened, and honestly, I'm grateful in a way. Not for the break-in attempt, obviously, but for how it brought the neighborhood together. People who never spoke before are now friends, looking out for each other and making sure nothing like this happens again. The new HOA board recently approved my request to build a small shed behind my garage for additional tool storage. Under Karen's leadership, that request had been denied 3 times. The approval came with a note that read, "Just make sure you engrave your name on everything in there too. At least we can laugh about it now." Tom and Karen still haven't apologized. I doubt they ever will. Their lawyer probably advised against it, and from what I've seen of their character, they likely still believe they were somehow in the right. But their influence in the neighborhood is gone, and that's apology enough for me. Last weekend, I hosted a workshop for kids in the neighborhood, teaching them basic woodworking skills. As I watched them learn to use tools safely and create their first projects, I couldn't help but think about how differently things could have turned out if I hadn't had those security cameras installed. The whole experience has taught me that while most people are good neighbors, it only takes 1 or 2 entitled individuals to create chaos. But it also showed me that when a community stands together against bullying and abuse of power, positive change is possible. I've started mentoring a couple of teenagers who showed interest in carpentry during the workshop. They come by after school to learn, and their parents are grateful for the positive influence. It's funny how something good can come from such a negative experience. Karen and Tom recently put their house up for sale. I can't say I'm sad to see them go, but I do hope they've learned something from all this. Though given the security system installed, signs they've plastered all over their yard, definitely against HOA regulations, maybe they're just worried about karma. The new HOA board has invited me to join them, citing my practical experience with security issues, but I politely declined. I'm happy being just a regular resident, focusing on my woodworking and teaching the next generation of craftspeople, though I did agree to consult on security measures for the community center they're planning to build. Life has mostly returned to normal now, but this experience has left a lasting impact on our community. We're more vigilant, yes, but also more connected. People look out for each other more, and there's a stronger sense of actual community, not the forced kind that Karen tried to create through rules and regulations, but the genuine kind that comes from neighbors supporting each other. I still have the security footage saved, though I haven't watched it since the court proceedings. Sometimes I think about showing it at the block party as a cautionary tale, but that might be a bit much. Instead, I've focused on moving forward and helping build the kind of neighborhood we all want to live in. The irony isn't lost on me that Karen and Tom's attempt to build community through force sharing actually ended up bringing us together, just not in the way they intended. Sometimes the best communities are formed not through rules and regulations, but through standing together against those who would abuse their power. As I write this from my workshop, surrounded by my securely stored tools, all still with their names clearly engraved, I can't help but smile at how things turned out. The garage door has a new, much better lock, the security system is top-notch, and the neighborhood is stronger than ever. To anyone dealing with HOA overreach or entitled neighbors, my advice is simple: document everything, know your rights, and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. You might find that you're not alone, and that positive change is possible when people come together to support what's right. And maybe, just maybe, install some security cameras. You never know when you'll need them to prove that no, your table saw isn't actually community property, no matter what the HOA president claims. Update, 6 months later. I promised some folks who read my original post that I'd update if anything significant happened, and well, there have been some interesting developments worth sharing. Karen and Tom's house finally sold last month, but not before they tried one last desperate attempt at revenge. They filed a civil lawsuit against me, claiming emotional distress and damage to their reputation. Their lawyer must have been desperate for billable hours, because the case was laughably weak. My security footage proved to be worth its weight in gold yet again. During the court proceedings, their lawyer tried to argue that the cameras violated HOA privacy regulations. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, shut that down immediately. "Let me get this straight," she said, reviewing the documents. "Your clients broke into the plaintiff's garage, attempted to steal thousands of dollars worth of professional equipment, and now you're arguing that the security cameras that caught them were the real violation?" Their lawyer stumbled through some response about community standards, but the judge wasn't having it. She dismissed their case and ordered them to pay my legal fees. The look on Karen's face when the ruling came down, priceless. The new owners of their house are a young couple with 2 kids. The husband's a mechanic, and we've already bonded over our shared love of tools. They were horrified when neighbors told them about the previous owner's antics. "We almost didn't buy the house because of the stories we heard," Sarah, the wife, told me. "But then we saw how the neighborhood came together to stand up to them, and we knew this was actually the kind of community we wanted to join. Remember those teenagers I started mentoring? One of them, Mike, has shown real talent. He's graduating high school next year, and I've offered him an apprenticeship in my business." His parents were thrilled. College isn't for everyone, and skilled trades can provide a great career path. The workshop program for neighborhood kids has grown into something bigger than I expected. We now have regular weekend classes, with parents volunteering to help supervise. The HOA even approved converting part of the community center into a dedicated workshop space. They insisted on installing security cameras, though. Can't imagine why. Speaking of the HOA, they've continued making positive changes. The new board recently hired a professional property management company to handle day-to-day operations, ensuring no single person can abuse their position again. All major decisions now require a community vote. But here's the real kicker. Last week, I received a certified letter from Tom and Karen's new HOA in their new neighborhood. Apparently, they tried to pull similar stunts there, claiming their neighbor's pool was community property, according to their interpretation of the bylaws. Their new HOA board contacted ours asking for information about their history here. I provided copies of all the documentation, including the security footage and court records. Their new HOA president sent me a thank you note. You've saved us from what could have been years of headaches. They're already talking about running for the board here, but that's not happening now. Officer Smith, who handled the original case, stops by occasionally to check on the youth workshop program. She's become an unofficial supporter, sometimes bringing donated tools from police auctions. You've turned a crime scene into a community center, she joked during her last visit. That's the kind of transformation we love to see. My business has continued to grow. The publicity from the incident, while unexpected, led to several high-profile commissions. I've had to hire 2 full-time employees to keep up with demand. One of them is actually Tom and Karen's former next-door neighbor, who lost his job during the pandemic. He'd always wanted to learn woodworking, and now he's becoming quite skilled. The "My Garage, My Rules" T-shirts have become a neighborhood tradition. We wear them at community events, and visitors always ask about the story behind them. It's become our way of remembering that standing up to bullies, no matter their position, is always the right choice. Last month, I was asked to speak at a regional HOA conference about security and community building. I shared our story and the positive changes that came from it. Several other communities have since adopted similar policies about board oversight and community involvement. The legal aftermath of the whole incident finally concluded when Karen and Tom's insurance company denied their claim for legal fees. Turns out, their homeowners policy didn't cover intentional criminal acts. They tried to appeal but got nowhere. The last I heard, they're still making payments on their legal bills. Some neighbors spotted them at a local restaurant recently. They were sitting at a corner table, and apparently, Karen was complaining loudly about how that carpenter ruined our lives. The waiter, who happens to live in our neighborhood, just smiled and brought them their check, along with a photo of himself wearing a "My Garage, My Rules" shirt. The security system I installed has been upgraded even further. I've added cameras covering the entire property, connected to a smart system that can distinguish between regular movement and suspicious activity. Several neighbors have asked me to help them set up similar systems. We've created an informal neighborhood watch program, with everyone looking out for each other. Mike, my young apprentice, recently completed his first solo project, a custom toy box for the community center. He engraved his name on it, just in case anyone tries to claim it's community property, he said with a grin. The kid's got a good sense of humor. The workshop program has started partnering with local schools. We offer weekend classes for students interested in learning practical skills. The school board is even considering adding a vocational training program based on our success. It's amazing how something good can come from such a negative experience. I've been documenting everything about the workshop program, including safety protocols and teaching methods. Several other communities have reached out about starting similar programs. We're working on creating a guide that other neighborhoods can use to establish their own community workshops. The legal precedent from our case has been cited in 3 other HOA disputes in neighboring counties. Each time, the judges referenced our case as an example of clear overreach and the importance of having proper security measures in place. Karen and Tom's attempt to claim emotional distress actually set another legal precedent. The judge's ruling specifically addressed the issue of HOA officers attempting to use their positions to bully residents. It's now being used in HOA board training sessions across the state as an example of what not to do. The community center workshop has become so popular that we've had to establish a booking system. We offer classes for different skill levels, from basic tool safety for beginners to advanced woodworking techniques. Every participant signs a waiver that includes a humorous clause about all tools being personal property, not community property. Last week, I received an unexpected letter from Tom and Karen's son, who's in college. He apologized for his parents' behavior and shared that he's been trying to convince them to seek counseling for their controlling tendencies. It was a mature and thoughtful gesture that showed not everyone in their family shares their entitled attitude. The neighborhood's annual block party was last weekend, and the sense of community was stronger than ever. We set up demonstration stations where kids could try simple woodworking projects under supervision. The highlight was a group photo of everyone wearing their My Garage, My Rules shirts. It's going up in the community center. Looking back on everything that's happened, I'm proud of how our community responded to bullying and entitlement. Instead of letting it divide us, we used it as an opportunity to build something better. The workshop program, the strengthened security measures, the new HOA policies, all of these positive changes came from standing up to people who thought they could abuse their power. I still have the original security footage saved on a hard drive. It serves as a reminder that sometimes you have to stand your ground, even when the people trying to take advantage of you hold positions of authority. The teenagers in the workshop program love hearing the story, especially when I show them the engraving tools we use to mark all our equipment. The new property management company recently conducted an audit of all HOA policies and procedures. They found several other vague bylaws that could have been misused and worked with the board to clarify them. Every resident received a clear, updated copy of the rules, with an introduction that specifically addresses the difference between community and private property. My business continues to thrive, and I've started a mentorship program for other craftspeople looking to start their own businesses. I share my experiences, including the importance of security measures and proper documentation. The incident with Karen and Tom taught me valuable lessons about protecting yourself and your livelihood. The story has become something of a legend in local HOA circles. At a recent regional meeting, someone referred to attempting to claim private property as pulling a Karen. She may not have gotten the legacy she wanted as HOA president, but she certainly left her mark. As for me, I'm focusing on growing my business, mentoring the next generation of craftspeople, and helping maintain the positive community we've built. The security cameras are still rolling. The tools are still clearly marked, and the garage door has the best locks money can buy. But more importantly, we've got neighbors who look out for each other and stand together against bullying and entitlement. They say good fences make good neighbors, but I've learned it's really about having clear boundaries and the courage to enforce them. That, and maybe a good security system with HD cameras. You never know when you might need to prove that your table saw isn't actually community property. The end, for real this time.